Are tightening. Is that the
They
way?
are.
What's going on?
Well, two things. As you saw with Trump, you're seeing a more sober, kind of calm, even, dare I say it, presidential candidate. His new advisors have done a very good job at reining him in and calming him down, and I think that's part of it. He can just seems like a more plausible, possible president to more voters. And of course, Clinton's made a lot of mistakes. So you combine those together, and the polls really have tightened. And the other factor here is that Clinton is simply not generating the same kind of excitement in the Democratic base that Bill Clinton or that Barack Obama did. Yes, her numbers are still very good with African Americans, with Mexican Americans, with Hispanics, with young people, but the spark isn't there. And we saw warning signs of that with the Sanders campaign. If you look back, it was clear that she wasn't appealing to some important Democratic groups, even in the primaries against a 73-year-old socialist. So what she needs to do is somehow generate some excitement, because intensity matters in politics. It's not just part of it is who goes out to vote. And if it's a rainy day or the babysitter doesn't show up, you say, I'm not going to bother. And you need a certain commitment, a certain intensity to actually show up. And that's clearly lacking in the Clinton campaign so far.
I think that's the $64,000 story, and your point is well taken, that great, she gets 98% of the African-American vote. But if only a fraction of that vote comes out to vote, you get 98% of 50% as opposed to 98% of 80%. That's the difference between winning and losing.
It is, and it's not just who comes out to vote. If people, we know from all the studies of social media that people trust information from their friends more than any other source. So our friends contacting friends, is there a sense of community and connection where people don't just vote, but they urge other people to vote. They volunteer on election day. They give money. There are all sorts of ways in which intensity really matters in politics. And she just simply has not been able to do that. And I think it's increasingly clear that what she has to do is demonize Donald Trump. She simply is not going to generate that enthusiasm by saying, I'm going to be a wonderful president. Because people don't necessarily, even her supporters, believe that. But if she, and you saw it over the weekend, seizing on the birther issue, trying to remind African Americans, you might not love Hillary Clinton, but the man she's running against is a racist. This is a man who has for 5 years advocated a profoundly racist notion that the president of the United States was not born in this country and is not a legitimate president. This is the man, she has to say to Hispanics, who is called immigrants rapists and criminals. This is the man who has said he wants to bar Muslims from this country. You might not love Hillary Clinton, but you have to understand what the alternative is. And if she's going to win this race, I think that's her best shot.
Stephen Roberts, what do you make of the story that Donald Trump isn't using a Hillary Clinton stand-in for his debate prep?
You know, of course, this is just one more example of Donald Trump defying convention. It's been done as far as I've been covering politics. There's always been a stand-in who performs this role and gives people it's like a sparring partner, right? In boxing or spring training games, you got to hit live pitching before, in spring training before you can go to big league games. But he just apparently, these reports say that he's not going to do it. He's defied history many times in this year. I've covered 13 elections, McGraw, and I still believe strongly that history has a lot of lessons to tell. But sometimes history can trip you up. History would have said a year ago that a man of this lack of experience, this lack of credibility, could not have gotten anywhere near the nomination, let alone the presidency. Well, history was wrong. And you got to be careful. History teaches a lot, but it doesn't teach everything.
He is running a high wire act. What are you expecting from the debates? I mean, is this going to be, as I've heard it say many people say, must-see TV? I mean, is this going to be drama-filled?
Sure. And it's, one of the interesting things about debates these days, particularly young people, they don't just watch the television. They dual and triple screen. They'll have their laptops out, their cell phones out. They'll be monitoring fact checkers. They'll be monitoring analysts from independent fact checkers, what the campaigns have to say. A lot of what the interpretation and the spin on debates now happens in real time, McGraw. It doesn't happen after the debates are over. So this whole innovation of technology changes in some ways the nature of the debates, because the interpretation starts minutes after the debate begins. And I do think it will be very closely watched. I think the single biggest question in the debates is, does Donald Trump come off as a credible person? Can people who have these profound doubts about him look at that TV and say, gee, I can actually imagine him as president? I think that there are still a lot of Americans who have not crossed that threshold. But if he can somehow manage to do that on television, very much the way Ronald Reagan did in the 1980 debates, then Hillary Clinton's got a real problem.
Stephen Roberts, we'll talk to you next week all about it. ABC News political analyst. Thanks, Stephen. Have a good week.
Okay, pal.
726, Big 550, KTRS. We're going to go to numbers. We'll check numbers. We'll do it next. Big 550,